Tech with Heart is all about empowering business success in a digital era. And one of the ways that we can help you is to help you be seen online as the authority and the credible celebrity, status that you're looking for. And we have a special guest today, Howard Lim, who is really phenomenal in this area. I'm going to just introduce him real quick, and then I'll get right into the nitty-gritty and the nuts and bolts of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about 3 steps to creating a world-class brand. And for over 30 years, Howard Lim is the president of How Creative, and he has represented a vast array of Fortune 500 brands, including Apple, Disney, DreamWorks, Acura, Xerox, Oracle, Honda. I mean, Cirque du Soleil. He's definitely got his expertise behind him. And today he is going to talk to us about branding. He's the author of the Authentic Branding book, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And he has taught more than 100,000 entrepreneurs how to build differentiated brands that connect with customers intellectually and emotionally, which is so huge. So welcome, Howard. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today and sharing a little bit of your expertise.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm glad to be here and being able to be at service.
Thank you so much. We are definitely excited about what you're going to share with us. So what is the first of those 3 critical steps to creating a world-class brand? And what exactly does that even mean, if you don't mind? Just go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about what the common perception is of what a brand is versus what it really is. And then we'll talk about what that first step is.
Sure. So a lot of people are still confused out there. What is branding? They think it's really the logo, for example, and quite honestly, it's not even the business or the service or the actual product. What it really is how the company is projecting its image, and what matters more is how the consumer or the prospect is interpreting that company as a brand. So what happens is a brand really resides in the heart and in the mind, in the emotions, and they own that. They own what they are interpreting. They own what they think about that company. And that's what it is to build a brand, is what the company owns inside their heart and intellect and in their emotions.
So in a way, isn't it almost like your brand is what other people think of you?
Yeah, it's not what you're saying, it's what everyone else is saying about you.
Okay. All right. So it's a little bit of a twist. Some people definitely think that getting some really great graphics, banner graphics, whatever, their picture of themselves, standing a certain way in a certain outfit, naming their company, creating a logo for the company is branding. And I'm understanding that is just only a facet of it. So what is the first step towards creating a world-class brand, Howard?
The first step is actually strategizing. It's building a strategy to what's going to make your business stand out above the crowd. What is it that you're doing differently with your product, your service, or your information? And all the different ways you could capitalize on that idea that's making you unique. So the first step is strategizing. And there's 3 parts to the strategy, at least when we do strategy sessions, which I call a blueprint. The first is looking at, well, what business model are you creating and how do you then protect it as far as its intellectual property? So the first part is about how you're going to build a business model that actually, instead of just being a 4-cylinder engine, it's a 12-cylinder engine. So you have something that's very robust from the beginning. The second part of this is then looking at, from a strategic standpoint, how do you want to be known? What's going to be your message? So now you're wrapping a brand, okay, of how you want to be perceived in the marketplace by strategizing what it is that you're offering, why does this make a difference to people, and who's your target market, okay? And a third part about this strategy within the first step is understanding what type of market are you after? What type of demographic or psychograph or generation are you after? For example, there's 3 generations right now. There's the baby boomer, the X, and the Y generation, which are your 3 biggest buying powers. Millennial is kind of a cross between the X and the Y, but in my opinion, they're still very distinct in the way they think, okay? So if you're building a brand and you want to communicate it and you're communicating it to the wrong generation, unfortunately, you're going to waste a lot of money and time on your marketing. Okay. So the first part is really getting clarity of who you are, what you do, what makes you different, and why should this matter to people. That's all happens in strategy. Okay. The second component to this in the sequence of events is now, what kind of identity do you want to build to get in the mind of the consumer? So what you're saying, yeah, people think it's a logo, they think it's the website. Those are all elements that need to make up the whole. Most companies, what they do is, I call it the Sybil effect. They work with one graphic designer to work on their logo, another work on a website, another one to do the social media. What happens is that you look fragmented and you do not look like you're concise with your message, the look and the feel and the tone of how you actually want to be seen. Okay. So those are all components, but that itself, by individual parts, those are individual parts that make up the whole of a brand identity. Okay. The third part to this, okay, in a sequence, and we'll dive in deeper, is now marketing and PR, and then the social media is managing the brand to manage that brand awareness to your target market. Okay. So that's, in a sense, the sequence of building a world-class brand. And then based on what you want to ask me, I could dive into any one of those sectors or those sections in a deeper dive.
Well, I think I love the fact that you just mentioned a sequence, because it's so important for us to know that there is planning that's needed in order to create a world-class brand, because like you mentioned, it's very easy to look fragmented, and none of us really want that. And if we don't really fully understand who exactly our target is, or what our message is, or what we're all about, and what we want to convey in our brand, because brand is not definitely more than some graphics or even a message. It really is, what do you want to stand for, correct? And that's just such a huge part. You have to figure all that out. So let me just ask you this: how long does it normally take for you to work with some of these really bigger brands? And the strategy part, like, how long of a process is that, and how many people are involved, and kind of give us like an idea of what that looks like.
So the first part, which is strategy, which I call the master blueprint, that we've created a proprietary system around, it's 3 days. It's really collapsing what would take decades to figure out a company of what it would need to be, what would be its processes, its systems, its operations, its intellectual property, its business model, and what kind of identity are they looking at building? What's that DNA to build their identity? It's literally 3 days. It's all strategy. So what we're doing is compressing time, therefore, that we come out at the top right out of the gates. Who's involved? It's me, and then I usually bring one of my assistants to do all the note-taking, you could say, and it's a whole sequence of events, of questions I ask. They're quality questions to get quality answers to avoid huge mistakes that could happen down the road if these questions were not asked, okay? What happens on my client side, it's usually I have no more than 5 of the C positions. It's usually the owner, and then people that actually have an influence on the direction and leadership, okay? So usually, like, for example, the head of sales, the head of marketing, those become the critical elements that could advance the business, the brand, and the market. So they get included because there's specific questions I ask them. So we're working as a team, and therefore we're all starting on the same page to begin with as well. And we're very clear of the direction we're going to move forward when it comes after the strategy session.
Can you share, because since you've been doing this for 30 years, I'm pretty sure you can come up with a story where in the strategy session, you've seen people just like perhaps come alive with like the clarity that they are so drastically needed in order to not even just create a world-class brand, but to create a world-class company. Sometimes it's those type of strategy sessions where you're asking, like you said, the quality questions that really unlocks people's minds, and they just get completely excited about this, where they're heading, and they know they're going to get there because now everything's even clearer than ever before. Do you have any stories you can share?
Oh yeah, there's lots of stories. The funny thing is, every time I do one of these strategy sessions, I'm not kidding you, every client goes, I wish we did this at the beginning, because they had made hundreds and millions of dollars worth of mistakes and keep firing and rehiring people without having a clear culture. So yeah, like WSS, during the recession of 2008, they came to us and they had just lost 2 of their retail stores. What they do is they actually sell men's footwear for the athletic world. And so they're basically a shoe store, and they had 52 retail stores. Actually, had 54 before they met us. They lost 2 of them during the recession. They're losing 10% per year. And I was telling, the owner heard that I could turn companies around as well, besides growing companies, but turn them around and help pivot in certain situations in crisis. So the owner, and I met the owner, and I told him what process we would take in developing a new brand. We do a lot of times what are called brand makeovers as well. Besides upgrade, we do makeovers. And I started identifying things why things were not working for him by examining and doing an assessment of their business on the inside and then the exterior of how they're being presented to the world, okay? When he introduced me to the vice presidents, I think there's 5 or 7 of the vice presidents, because it's a pretty big company. They all had in their mind, I found this out after the end of the first day, they go, not another strategist, not another strategy session by another business strategist or marketing or brand strategist. Because they're so used to, like, there's no sense of execution, and there's no sense of actually getting them inspired to a big picture that everyone can get involved. So you're right. So after the first day, when I looked at all the problems that they're having in different divisions of the company, from the lack of strategic partnerships, to the lack of sales, to the lack of even identifying the right market, the lack of actually having the right message to send out. After that first day, they're like, this is not typical of any strategy session we ever had. So they got really excited. Now, the cool thing about after we finished the strategy after 3 days, it's very intense. They said, we've never been able to talk, that one of the head of another department would go to me and say, I've never been able to talk to that person in the last 20 years. They've been in business for 25 years at the time. We've never had a way to actually coordinate what we were doing and aligning and working together cohesively. And I got that same feedback from all the different heads of all the VPs, because there was no single plan that pulled them all together with a clear vision, and also giving a clear plan of how we're going to roll out the next 5 years in a concrete way. So yes, it happens quite a bit. And one of the reasons why is because when it comes to a strong business and building a strong brand, is having a strong culture. And a strong culture is all your personnel to make sure that they're all aligned to the vision, but you also have the right people in the right seats. What we uncovered where we had the right person, but in the wrong seat. So we had to reorganize the structure of the business as well internally to make sure that we were able to build this world-class brand. So all our energy and efforts were to be able to roll in the same direction.
Wow, it's a lot all at once, because if you don't have, like you were saying, that world-class business first, it's hard to make a world-class brand because it's reliant upon the world-class business. So one of the things that we'd like to teach in the Tech with Heart Network too is how businesses can scale. And one of the things that we need is more systems. We need more the right team. You need to build your team, but if you're not building the right team with the right people in the place head positions of those teams, then it's not going to go. And how important it is to know what your culture is, what your mission is, and how you can onboard new team members in a way that they get it. It just locks in and it's clear. And that is not an easy feat. It is not at all. I mean, you're talking to a corporation that was doing really well, and then 25 years later, they're not doing so well. So they realize, oh, we need to bring in some outside help. And I think this is why it's so critical that all business owners need to have mentors. They need to have somebody in their arena that has been far more successful than they've ever been, because sometimes it's just a way of looking at things just a little bit differently that all of a sudden just unlocks a tremendous amount of aha. And then, of course, having the right team to help get those plans in place so it's all systemized, as much as possible, working together cohesively. That's so huge. Thank you for sharing that story. It's kind of enlightening. I hope you're finding value if you're watching the show. So, okay, so you've got your strategy, you've got your vision, everybody's on board, everybody's aligned. And then what? You said something about implementation phase. What does that look like normally?
Well, it usually looks like the way that we do it with our process is I do a whole inventory of all the things that you're using to communicate their brand, which in a branding world are called touch points. But I find that touch point is not strong enough and relevant enough in today's world. I call them aspiration engagement point. You got to be inspired. You got to be engaged. Okay. It's a way to convert a bystander into a buyer. This could be your website. This could be the storefront. This could be even a vehicle wrap. This could be the advertising, the social media, the online marketing, the offline marketing. It's everything. So they had thousands of different engagement points, but quite honestly, none of them were really inspiring. And so the first thing, by understanding who they are, what they do, what's to make it unique, and why should this matter to people, we now set a baseline of who we want to become. So when I take an inventory of how they've been doing business and how they've been projecting themselves on a 10-point scale, what we discovered, what we could create is an 8, 9, and 10, but how they've been projecting themselves out there the last 25 years has been more like a 2 or 3 or 4 at the best usually. So there's this huge gap between how they're presenting themselves now and how they want to be based on what was unfolded and what was created and what was their blind spots and what is their potential based on the strategy. Now we need to fill that gap. And that's when we get in building that bridge. But the first step, again, is looking at the inventory of all the mistakes they've been making by identifying their blind spots, okay? And every company has a lot of blind spots, exactly what you said. It's like having a mentor to identify what the people in the business or the business itself is not seeing, okay? Taking another perspective. So by doing that, I look at everything, their vehicle wraps, their store displays, their inside their stores, all their advertising, their radio spots, the TV spots, and look at all the inconsistencies, the misuse of their message, the misuse of fonts, the misuse of the brand, what's called a brand personality, the misuse of colors. So after examining it and showing them firsthand through science of why it's not working, what has been really, why they're off the mark, what has been the gap that they have not been able to bridge. After that's been identified, then we start creating, with my team, we start creating an overall look and feel with the right tone, the right voice, the right look, the right feel. So we're putting together the written word, okay? And we're putting together the written word, but also the audio word for radio. And then we're putting together the right personality through being expressed through the right colors, the right photography, which is what I call signatures look and feel. So now they have something that's unique to them, as well as where everything is cohesive, okay? So we present then usually like 3 different scenarios, 3 different actual campaigns. Here's one campaign that represents you. Here's a second campaign that represents you. Here's a third. Which one do you think best represents you based on what we unfolded in the strategy session, okay? Once we present them, they'll choose one, they'll choose 2. We'll talk further about it. And then when we hit the green light, then we move to full execution of redesign all their engagement points. But we do it in a sequence. For this case with WSS, they're known as WSS Warehouse Shoe Sale. We had to lose Warehouse Shoe Sale and just brand WSS because Warehouse Shoe Sale sound like they're a price driven, not quality value driven, even though they want to be perceived as quality value driven. But Warehouse Shoe Sale, just the name and the tone looked cheesy, looked cheap. Okay, so we had to change that. Then we changed our brand mark. which is different than the logo. Okay. And then we started to work on 4 of their storefronts. They gave us 4 stores to redesign, reposition. And once we start to see the sales on that, which we gained 200% in 7 months, just on the exterior of 4 stores, then the president came in and said, rebrand all of our stores within the next year. So we did. And that was a lot because we were talking about radio spots, TV spots, signage, the exterior of the stores, different campaigns that we were working on. So yeah, so that's how the sequence works, is as far as when you roll out a new, what we call relaunch of a brand, okay, or also a makeover. And then there's a part 2 in this part, as far as execution, is retrain the consumer of who we are now. Okay. So we created these advertisements that said the relaunch of WSS, same great service, but we're doing these things that will add more value to you as our customer. Okay. So now there's a reason why the shoppers that they had that were loyal shoppers actually feel even better about shopping there, because we thought of what matters more to them as well. And then we've adjusted it to new shoppers. So with them, they're only after one, when we identified in the strategy session, they're only after one group of people of the Hispanic market. But I said, what about the Caucasian market? What about the Asian market? What about the Middle Eastern market? So we opened it up. We opened up so we had more revenue streams, okay? Now, the biggest question that the CEO had and the president had, or the founder, I should say, he said, well, would this alienate our loyal shoppers that we started with us? I said, no, it would inspire them, because you're thinking of them and bringing them a world-class brand that they could shop in and get better service, get better value, get a better experience. And we did a survey after we opened the 4 stores as our pilot stores, and we did this whole survey with marketing, and everything was positive. Everything was positive with the existing loyal shoppers and the new shoppers.
Well, thank you for sharing us and painting the picture for that as well, because implementation is something that I know a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, because they do rely on a lot of VAs, VA standing for virtual assistants. So do you have any words you can speak to us in that realm as far as when you have to work with a virtual team? Because earlier you had mentioned that sometimes you have one person working on some of your graphics and then this other person working on your website. It's sometimes very difficult to find an entity that you can afford as you're starting out in business that can do all of those things. So what do you recommend?
Well, it's funny because right now I have 2 clients where they can't afford our done for you model. So I'm a strategist, an executor, and a brand manager. So what I'm doing is I'm managing their individual, the person that's doing the website, the person that's doing the logo, the person that's doing the advertising, the one that's doing the marketing. What I'm doing is overseeing them all, because that's an art in itself. And it takes years to understand how to pull all the pieces together. So they're now not working as what I call silos. They're all now working towards a common purpose. So that's when I could speak their language and say, okay, just to type the Kearney, add more leading here, change the font, change the color to this Pantone color. So then what happens, and I'm hired as a consultant to work with the individuals, okay? But it's still, so they get a much better result looking really professional, but then they're not investing into hiring us to do everything that needs to be done, because we do that as well, of course. I have an actual firm that we do everything. So that's how I help out smaller companies and what they could do. Because what happens is that they're going to keep splintering their company and keep splintering their message and not get where they want to go. So they're going to end up spending so much more money and so much more time and never getting where they want to be, okay? But keep working with individuals that are not working as a team, because you don't have someone at the top, like a manager, to be able to manage the team. And that's not the CEO, the owner's job, because that's not who they are supposed to be. They're supposed to be leading the company and driving the company, and then having the support team to support them.
Wonderful. So thank you for that. I think that it's really great for you to point it out that you don't necessarily have to have one or two people doing it all that work in the office side by side, but definitely need to be supervised and organized and managed by somebody who does know what the heck a world-class brand is supposed to look like, so that they can stay on track. Because otherwise it's very easy, especially with virtual assistants, is that if you're not checking in with them, or your program manager or your operations manager, whoever's managing them, isn't checking in with them regularly, they could be going off in a direction that they weren't meant to. And so that's always kind of a little bit of a nerve-wracking, that's why, I'm in the process right now of learning how to grow my teams virtually, because we are a virtual business right now. And yeah, I really am enjoying this conversation. I think that's hopefully going to bring a lot of enlightenment to people who are searching for why they aren't crushing it the way that they really believe they can crush it. And I think that this is a huge part of it. I know that if you want to attract big fish, then you need to be able to present yourself as one of them, or at least close to one of them, because otherwise they may not want to associate themselves even with you, because your brand isn't strong enough, and that could dilute their brand. So that's something to really strongly consider. All right, well, when we come back, we're going to talk about the third part of that systemization, which is all about marketing your brand. Now that you've got your strategy figured out and your implementation underway, now it's time to market it. So when we come back, we'll hear from Howard on how you can market your world-class brand.
The problem is that business owners are losing millions of dollars of potential revenue each year because they don't know how to stand apart from the competition. I'm Michelle Calloway. I am the founder and CEO of Revealio, an augmented reality marketing tool that we've created for business owners like you to help you captivate people's attention.
Oh, that's so cool!
Influence their buying decisions.
I like it. Okay. I like that a lot.
That's right.
Oh, I want that.
I love it.
We do this by making your brand or product come alive with virtual content. You can actually take a viewer through the entire buyer's journey in less than 60 seconds. It's super easy to do. Just send us your artwork, send us your video, and we'll connect them and make the magic happen. So start standing out and influencing today.
So then the next level, you said strategies or system. What was the word? Synchronization. Yeah, you have to have it all in order. First the strategy, then the implementation, and then the marketing. Can you speak to us a little bit about that, and then we'll wrap it up when talking about what your book can provide for people.
Sure. So what's typical for most companies, they have an idea and they go directly to the market with their idea. And they forget the biggest asset they could own over time and build equity in, so it's worth a lot more. It's like it keeps it reinvesting in itself, which is the brand. Okay. So the third component is this. Now, the reason for this too is because when marketing people are left to their own devices, they're only making their decision based on what you're telling them. But if you haven't gone through this rodeo again before and over again, you're not going to be able to market your brand properly to being world class. It's going to be done what I call through the hip, right? You're just doing it through the hip. So when it comes to building the brand, it's now in conjunction with the marketing team to be able to take what's been created and market it through their channels of communication, whether online, offline, whether through social media, whether through advertising and print. The point being is that now they have something that's concrete that they feel that they could really market appropriately. Because what happens when I talk to a lot of marketing companies, and by the way, a lot of marketing companies hire our company because they go, we're tired of working with this client because they keep changing their mind because they're so confused. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they stand for. They don't know what the brand identity is. And they keep blaming it on us that we're not doing our job. And I completely understand what you're saying. So marketing companies love us because we make their job easier because we give them the tool and the fuel to market. And we do it in a way that's not even right. That's in addition to being the right tool and the right fuel, we're giving something that they can feel prideful to market because they know it's worth marketing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's a marketing itself is a whole lot of conversations, right? As far as how to do it. There's different campaigns you can be doing within your marketing plan, but you always need to be staying on point and keeping true to who you are and what your brand is all about. And I personally, with Revelio, we provide interactive branded experiences. So we love it when brands already know what and who they are. And then we can help them, we basically help them shine even brighter when they're meeting people in person. And we also provide that megaphone online through publicity. So now that you've got your brand figured out, now it's time to be really sharing it with the world, not just through webinars or whatnot, but let's get you in the press. Yeah, let's help you gain more notoriety globally, even through the press, and that really helps. So I love this whole concept and this whole subject matter of marketing. You wrote a book that is, you basically say that there's some blueprints in there as far as helping people go through the systemization and this different parts of this process. It's called Authentic Branding. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit about what we can expect as far as like, what are you providing for us if we were to go and get that book?
Sure. Yeah. The reason why I wrote this book is because 25 years ago, I've been in business for 33 years, but 25 years ago is when I started to speak on branding before it became known. So there was only a couple books that were out there, which were very good books, by the way. So there was a book called Strong Brands, brilliant book. But what I found is that these books really didn't have any exercises to really, the author wasn't showing some of their intellectual property, sharing some of their intellectual property in the sense of how to actually build the brand. It talked about it, right? But didn't show you how, okay? So what I wanted to do, and I spent 3 years writing this book and spent probably $100,000 investing in editing and time. But anyways, the point being is that I wanted to share this book and build a book that actually gave actual physical exercises in each chapter. So people that were reading the book, business owners, or let's say C positions, or people that were on the team, could actually start to help themselves with their own brand, okay, through the right guidance, through the right tools. So the book is actually constructed based on me building many, many, many multi-million dollar and it's several billion dollar brands. And I'm taking my experience and then putting it into words. So therefore people are learning from the top view, the highest standard. And my whole purpose is, the reason why I wrote this book is because I had this vision of inverting the number where you hear that 90% of companies fail within the first 2 to 5 years or reach a lid. They don't know how to grow. So my vision, my philosophy is actually to invert that number into successful companies. So now we flip that chart around. The only way I knew how to do that is to get more exposure and to actually be able to create tools for different businesses. So this book is worth a lot in gold in a sense, as far as the value that you would receive from it. And it's designed so anybody could learn from it, whether you're a small company starting up, entrepreneur, whether you're a CEO, whether you're actually, president of a multi-million to $1 billion company, you're going to get value regardless where you're coming in, no matter what cycle of the business you're coming in as well.
Well, thank you so much. So they can go to Amazon and they can look up Authentic Branding by Howard A. Lim, and you can get that off of Amazon. And if you are interested in reaching out to Howard to see how he can help you, because he does a lot of business strategy work as well as helping you with your brand, because we discussed how important it is for you to have a world-class business in order for you to have a world-class brand. So he's actually expanded beyond branding and has been doing this for a while. So how can they come and get a hold of you, Howard? What's the best thing for them to do?
Sure. So the best thing to do is actually just email me at howard@howcreative.com, howcreative.com, HOWcreative.com. And there's another thing that I will offer. I usually charge $3,000 for this, but I'll charge $500 on this, is that I could do an assessment for you, an online assessment where I use Zoom. We work for an hour. You send me everything that you're using to represent your brand. Okay, that means your marketing material, your advertising material, your logo, your brochure. And then what I do for an hour is I mark up everything you could improve. Okay. So I'm really fast, I'm really quick. So I record the whole session and then I mark up, hey, change this headline because it's not really gearing towards who your target market is based on a short conversation I had before we start working together on this, assessment. So I call it an online brand assessment, and it will definitely move you in the right direction and open your eyes and remove those blind spots that are hidden to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. You are definitely a master of your craft, and you have given us a lot of nuggets to chew on. And also, I really would suggest you go grab that book, Authentic Branding. Sounds like it's going to be very, very useful, something you will be able to resource again and again and again. So best of success to you all. And I want to let you know that if you would like to be notified when we're having our next big Tech with Heart interview on TV show, please reach out to us at techwithheartnetwork.com and join our mailing list for free. We are a heart-centered referral community where we love to joint venture and come together and lift each other up as we all rise. So thank you for participating in the show today. I hope you found it helpful. Howard, thank you so much for being our guest.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, and we look forward to next time. So thank you. Have a great day. To your success. Bye-bye.